I want to start off with some of the logistics first, which is we have two ASL interpreters with us today, and if you would like to utilize the interpretation, we suggest you pin both ASL interpreters, Julia and Gay, and they have ASL also in front of their names, so they should be rather easy to find in the participant list, but we suggest you pin them. And in addition to that, if you have questions, please use the Q&A. We will capture and want to hear all those questions. And so we're really looking forward to engaging our panel with this. So let's introduce ourselves. And as we do, I want to do a quick reminder. If you can mute your mics, just in case you have any background noise. And when we are going into some of the Q&A, if you can put some questions in there, and if we can have you unmute your mic then, if needed, we'll let you know. So, alrighty. So I'm Jessica Mayorga Nunez. I am one of the program support specialists with Supporting Inclusive Practices. And my Northern colleague in the Zoom room with me here is Heather Snipes. She is also a program specialist supporting the northern area of our state and is housed out of the El Dorado County Office of Education. And then we have our lovely panelists joining us today. So we have Jolie, I'm so sorry, Jolie
Gritchfield.
Yes, Jolie Gritchfield, and we have Eileen Cotter and Charmaine Lawson. And so they'll talk a little bit more about themselves, their roles. What we're really looking forward to hearing is you're going to hear things about what was their intentionality around their scheduling processes, those protected collaboration practices, that development of that shared vision, looking at how they removed barriers and made those shifts to support that collaborative practices, and how they really worked at aligning priorities both across general education and special education. And essential to this is building those structures that are not people dependent, but system embedded. And so that's really essential for this. So we really look forward to hearing how they kind of created their equitable systems.
Okay,
So
I guess I'll start. Oh, sorry.
yep, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Right
So
in.
I'm from Marysville Joint Unified School District. It's about 45 miles north of Sacramento. Our district has 10,000 students total and 13 elementary schools. And so at 10 of those elementary school sites, we have preschool programs, our state preschool. And at 4 of the elementary school sites, we have SDC classrooms that are right next to them. And we have been a SIP grantee since 2019. And so this is kind of our timeline. The county, our Yuba County Office of Ed served all of our students that had IEPs, whether it was speech only or SAI or OT. And so when we got the EAP grant in 2019, there was talk about doing some inclusion with those students from the county programs. A couple of the classrooms were located on our elementary sites, kind of a ways down from our preschool programs, but they took that time to start aligning the timeline, the class time that where they could come in on the playground and do some inclusion. And then in 2023, our district did a request and we transferred our program over to Marysville Joint. And so last year was our first year where Marysville Joint took over the entire special education preschool program from the county. And this is our second year. Next. And this is most of our team, aren't they so cute, in front of our district office. Those are our general education preschool teachers. We have about 50 paras and teachers, staff, and then 20, we have 6 SDC teachers and 18 paras, SDC paras. And they're wearing their logo here.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Jolie. Incredibly big team and a lot of great work. We're gonna hand it over to Eileen and Charmaine.
Hi, I'm Charmaine Lawson, in the La Mesa Spring Valley School District in San Diego County, and my partner Eileen Connor. She is the special ed director in our district, and I am the early education director in our district. Our district is a little bit different makeup than Marysville. We have about 10,000 students roughly at 21 schools, 17 of those are elementary. But our state preschool program is significantly smaller. We have about 8 state preschool programs, 1 parent pay, and we have almost the equal number of special day class or students identified with disabilities. And that really is because we have 40 community preschools in the area, and most of them, when they aren't, they can't serve, so they send them to us for assessment and for service. So our situation is a little bit more unique in trying to figure out how to provide as much inclusion when our numbers are not the same proportionally as when they get up in the upper grades. Our overarching focus areas really are similar to probably what a lot of you are working on, especially as we think about preschool and children getting younger in that 3-year-old programming, and really wanting them to have all the things with the newly designed PTKLF, the Preschool Transitional Kindergarten Learning Foundations, that playful exploration, all those early skills to set them up for success as they move forward. And then we're also really looking at our family partnerships to figure out how we support our families in supporting their children. So those have been a little bit about us.
And when we talk about our journey, I guess Charmaine and I both came into our roles here in La Mesa Spring Valley from other administrative positions, but knew, I guess 3 years ago, we started working together and realized that that our preschool programs had some places where we wanted to make some changes. And from the special education perspective, I wasn't sure about all of the things we could and couldn't do. And on Charmaine's end, she knew the preschool practices, but wasn't sure about all the things she could do related to special education. So we now kind of see, we even sit together. We can't really do very much alone ever, and rely on each other quite a bit. But I think we knew we wanted to make change, but seeing our work with SIM around preschool least restrictive environment really gave us a reason to forge ahead and to make some significant changes. So we were learning about the SIM process and looking at our root causes and all of our data, and it really did help to kind of propel some of the change. We started a co-teaching model, did some collaborative professional development, that a lot of different layers of professional development really, but some along with Jessica supporting us through SIP. And then making just little changes along the way that I think we'll talk about as we go through the presentation. And then just trying to leverage funding and knock down barriers that are preschool barriers and some that are special education barriers, and just finding solutions. And as you can see, our team is a little bit smaller. If we go to the next slide, when I saw Jolie's slide, I was like, wow, look at how big their preschool program is. And this is our little but powerful team, general education and special education together. And so that's this, I guess we'll talk about our journey a little today.
All right, so now thank you so much for introducing yourselves. Thank you for introducing your programs. And now we're going to get into a little bit more of the meat of things. And so the way that this is going to work is we're going to ask a question, and our guest speakers are each going to have chances to talk about how they went about the process, and we can see the similarities, but also the differences between the two programs. So our very first question that's going to go to Jolie is, why inclusion?
Okay, well, I think it's important to know a little bit about my background. I've been in education for 28 years, but for 18 years, I was the director of discipline and attendance for our district. And so this is my 3rd year as the child development director. And I happened to be on a EAP SIP meeting where Kevin Schaefer was talking about inclusion with preschool students that had moderate to severe disabilities. and in being included into our preschool classrooms. And I was thinking, well, I've never thought about that. I really, even though I've been in education as long as I have been, and I've even taught at an elementary school, I didn't really know about special education being served by the county at 3 years old. Like, I think that we assume people know all of these things, but that wasn't there. And so when he brought this up, I thought, well, why wouldn't we allow them? You know, when you're talking about the foundations or where preschool students are starting and what they're learning when it comes to communication or socialization or being independent to wash their hands, those are the same things that their typical peers are still they're practicing as well in the general education preschool classroom. So it's like, yeah, we've got to get this going. I mean, as soon as it was brought to light, it was like, we need to remove all these barriers and this needs to happen now. And so, without, we started with a lot of staff development. Kathy, the director that was here before I was here, they were doing a lot of staff development with the Yuba County SDC teachers before the program transfer. We continued with that mindset shift. So as you would know, the general education teachers were kind of like, well, do I have the ability to serve students with disabilities? And then the SDC side of, these are my kids and I need to make sure they reach those IEP goals. I'm responsible for that. How do we partner in that? And so just through, we did some site visits. Our general education teacher got to go to Lodi. We saw how they did things. And we created a model classroom. So our teachers next week will be talking about that. But that's kind of how we started it, was like, what are the hurdles are we going to see when we start doing inclusion? And so we did it as a state preschool. We had the students in the SDC classroom, quote unquote, visit. So we weren't over ratio. We made sure that our classrooms that are can only have 24 students weren't over that number for state preschool requirements. And we started guesting, and my teacher, Linda and Sophia, are here today. They started trying it out, like and what they found was, we can do this and this is the right thing to do. So there was a lot of hard work, but yet a lot of wins and a lot of just passion behind that. And now all of our classrooms now do inclusion. So we'll talk more a little bit about that.
Thanks, Jolie. Eileen and Charmaine.
Okay, so why inclusion? I'm guessing you all are here because you believe in inclusion too. I think part of what, when I got here, and part of what Eileen probably had, and as we've talked through people in different places, it's that, oh, I heard we can't do that, or we have this, or there's all these perceived obstacles of what can or can't be. And so knowing that we believe that inclusion is paramount, like Eileen said, we basically use that LRE to help move forward what we knew needed to happen. So we were like, well, the state expects this of us, and we know it's right. And we have in our upper grades, which is kind of opposite sometimes, because sometimes it starts in the early grades and then you get more segregated as you move through. But ours was opposite. We have more inclusion opportunities within our upper grades. So we needed to align to that district model to make sure that we were supporting it from the very beginning. And as Jolie said, really 3-year-olds, they're different. The differences are not that different. They're all learning the same things. So it really did, with that sim plan, it created an opportunity for us to really keep asking the why not question, and how come, and what can we do, versus hearing all the things we couldn't do. So we just kept trying to peel that onion and say, like, well, why that? Why not? Why, how not? And not that we are so far ahead. We don't have the EAP grant from before. We just got it this time. We still have a long way to go, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But really just trying to figure out, like, how do we move the needle? How do we start moving the rock? So.
Okay, yeah. So the first step, I saw that Kim McMillan put something in the chat about getting them on the same campus. And so we did do some movement of our preschool classrooms, where I had 2 morning preschool classrooms. I made an AM and PM class so that we can move an SDC classroom right next door. So all of our classrooms, our 5 classrooms, are right next to a general ed preschool classroom. Some of them are just divided by a break room. Some of them do, the playground, they all go out to the same playground. So we did a lot of shifting to make sure that we could put our classrooms right next door. I did close a couple school age programs so that we could open up some classrooms there. I added a Loma Rica preschool so that I could make sure that we met our quota or our requirement to make the state preschool funding that we get. And then I redid a lot of the job descriptions. That was big. That was the first time I came here. I was like, inclusion. And then the first question was like, well, we don't potty train in preschool. The kids have to come potty trained. And so we did use a lot of our experts from the SDC classrooms to say, really, we're not putting them on a changing table necessarily, unless they have some disability that requires that. We're coaching them through the process. And so once my teachers kind of learned about how we're just coaching those students to potty train, we did add it to the job description. There was a percentage we did negotiate. I think it was a 2.5% raise to add that the toileting practices and help on our job descriptions. We streamline enrollment. That was our biggest hurdle, to be honest. As we took over the program, there was some question on like, but we have to do FAPE. FAPE, we have to offer FAPE, and our parents going to want to do the income verification that's required from the state preschool. So we went to an online system for enrollment, which did remove a lot of barriers. When I talked to the parents, they're very excited to know that their children could have an opportunity to spend up to 2 hours or more in our preschool classroom for push-in services. So I go over that at all the initial IEPs on how to enroll online, the self-income verification that they have to do. We make all of the students do that online enrollment, even if they're only spending time on the playground, not quite spending 2 hours or more into our preschool program. So that's all aligned. And then our schedules are aligned. So every SDC teacher has a partner general ed teacher. They work together, lesson plan, make sure their schedules align, and the students are all treated as all of ours. So very proud of them. Oh, this is our beautiful Miss Linda and Miss Sophia, who are our model classroom that went ahead and just said, we're doing this. They ripped off the Band-Aid and said, we can do this. And so after going to Lodi, they did that. They spoke at the board. There was a little bit of pushback when we took over from the county, like, how is this going to work? And we've had just with parents being concerned, like, we've got a new system now. And so they've done a great job. They've embraced it. Our teachers are wonderful. And so couldn't do it without our staff.
Thank you, Jolie. I have to say something that stood out was that streamlining the enrollment and the alignment of schedules. And sometimes that takes time, but it's super powerful in moving it forward. So yeah, thank you. And I'll hand it over to Eileen and Charmaine about their process.
Sure, and it's been great to listen to Jolie just today, because Charmaine and I are writing down notes like, we have to do that too. We've got to get to that place. And so it's interesting that Jolie started by talking about putting her general education and her SDC classes on the same campus near each other. And that's like a next step for us. So I think when we came together, we started by looking at what can we do, what exists, and what's the next, like, one step ahead. And at the time, it felt like the idea of moving those classrooms seemed like a huge hurdle with all the licensing issues and the things. So we tackled a few smaller things first and some mindset work, I would say first. We looked with our teams at what exists within our system, and we tried to open the door to what could exist, what could be different. What could it look like if we didn't worry about all the laws and all the things? What would be our dream if we could make it happen? And then we talked with our teams about letting us worry about all the legal things, let us worry about the barriers, transportation, start times, where the classroom sits, who has a bathroom and who doesn't, what job description says you can diaper someone and what doesn't, right? And Jolie also said something about an incentive, a financial incentive for changing. We were like, oh, got to write that down. That's a good idea. We should have done that. And so I think that's when Charmaine and I were working together, I would say we started more from trying to work with our teams on creating a shared vision while we also were working on our own vision. So like we sometimes would feel like, I think this is the right next thing, but what do you think? And what does our group of teachers think? And why do we all think it? And so I have been in La Mesa Spring Valley for over 30 years, and Charmaine is new to the district. And really that dynamic helped me to be able to see things don't have to be the way they've always been, that there's other people out there in the world doing different things and bringing in those different ideas, right? And so I think our realignment of the preschool assessment team was an easy first step for Charmaine and I. It was something we could grab onto and change without a lot of like contract negotiation and all the little things that come. And it was all grounded in those root causes that were coming through our work with our SIM plan. And a lot of those barriers, as we put on the slide, they're still there. Like we're still working through them and try to work with our teams to understand the things they're worried about and put tools in their toolkit so they felt like they could do the work and that it wasn't scary. And I guess I said at the beginning that we just kind of started where we were and tried to be creative. And I think Charmaine's lens coming from somewhere outside of La Mesa Spring Valley said, well, you know, you could have a co-teach class. Oh, really? What's that? Tell me what that looks like. Oh, you could do this also. And kind of as we went to SIP conferences and AXA and different things, we were hearing about ideas from other districts that helped us create what a pilot program could look like. And then Charmaine and her team worked hard on that EAT grant, and yay, we got that, although a little adjusted for this year, but we're excited about what that brings. And I don't know what you would add to that with regard to our process.
Yeah, I think having the help from SIP to help us be participants alongside our teachers was a really good, helpful next step, because instead of Eileen and I trying to lead and push our teachers, we actually got to participate alongside them, which was super helpful to as we were creating this vision and as we were pushing our own thinking and as we were really trying to be true listeners. So that was a really added benefit of being part of SIP and having Jessica come down and help us as we all sort of re-questioned, like, what's holding us back? What are the reasons why we're not moving forward? And so just being part of those conversations, asking the hard questions. And again, that now we have that mindset mostly there, and it allows us to keep pushing forward to our that ultimate goal that we're going to. And again, we're on our journey. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but we've just started getting things going.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that has really helped us be successful is making sure that our teachers have the tools to be able to deal with behaviors that might be, challenging. And so we, back when, before I even got started and I was in my other job, we as a district started doing a lot of training with conscious discipline, which is kind of the adult mindset first. And through that continued training with SEL, that SEL training, we have coaches on our team. So I developed a stipend for our coaches who have to go out and visit other classrooms to make sure that we maintain that high quality. They have to weekly touch base with their partner teacher outside of their classroom. And so even our coaches have coaches, so they come in and coach their paras. It helps them kind of, that efficacy part when they're helping each other. I think when I think about what I'm most proud of in our program is how every teacher helps each other, and they're in each other's classrooms. They're pushing each other to be the highest quality inclusive preschool program that we have. We also this year, last year applied for the PEPT grant, which is that embedded instruction grant, which is now really tailoring our focus on taking those little mini steps, providing opportunity in the classroom to reach those IEP goals. So I have a general education coach who's out of the classroom through the PEPT grant that's going in there working with our general ed teacher and our SDC teacher to practice on one student with an IEP goal and providing 7 opportunities within the day, 2-week period to see if they can meet that goals. And so, as you know, that'll change the whole thinking of how we look at all students who are struggling. It's, that practice is just, it's amazing. So that Pepti grant, I was so blessed. I deleted their email and then they called me and said, "Hey, we've heard about your program through SIP." So thank you, SIP. And then we did adopt creative curriculum. So we started the adoption process. We looked at different curriculums, and we chose creative curriculum as one. So both classrooms have that. Again, both classrooms structure their schedule so that they know when the children go in, they're going to be at circle time. If the SDC students from the SDC classroom are visiting during small group, they know when they go in, they're going to have small group. So, and then we had, because I have coaches within conscious discipline, we were given the opportunity to hold an academy here, and we had over 100 early educators attend our academy with my coaches doing the breakout groups. So it was really incredible. I create conscious disciplines made me a better person, actually a better wife too. So anyhow, so that I'm just proud of them, of what they do there. And so we continue. We have our monthly coaches meeting. The other thing I want to make sure that is really important is we have protected time weekly for the director of special education and coordinator and myself and the school psychologist to meet every Thursday at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we do it for an hour and a half every Thursday to talk about incoming placements, where we're going to place them, anything that's happening, staff development that we want to do next, talking about that. And so we would not be able to do what we do without that protected weekly time with the special education department and my department.
All right. So our professional learning is layers. So kind of thinking about how do we continue the mind shift and give people the tools. So as we were kind of learning from our folks, it wasn't so much that the barrier was that they didn't want to do something. It was more that they didn't feel like they had the skills. They didn't understand. I don't understand what happens in state preschool. There's a lot of rules around state preschool. I don't get that. And then reverse, I don't really understand what happens in special ed. I don't feel equipped. I don't feel like I know. So part of that, the layers that we put in while we were unpacking what those barriers were and understanding what people's hesitancies might be, really was just around, like Eileen talked about, just that we needed to have a vision of where we're going. We needed to have a common understanding that we all believe and that we were moving towards it. So that's the work we did specific within preschool. But we do have ongoing for all of our early childhood education staff, because when our preschoolers leave us, they go to TK and then they go to kinder. So we needed everyone within the early education world to kind of be learning the same things so that we're understanding who children are. So that teaching pyramid, going through that collectively with our teachers and paras and making sure that everybody is using the same language, that we're using the same tools, that we're supporting children in the same way. So collectively going through that special ed, gen ed, certificated and classified. And then with our teachers this year, we're going deep with the PTKLFs. We're really making sure we understand what should be expected of 3-year-olds, what should be expected of 4s, that we're not going too hard, too easy. We're finding that Goldilocks position of just right and understanding it and feeling like we all have a common understanding of what that looks like, so that we aren't just freaking out like, oh my God, this kid's, whatever. We're like, no, that's developmentally appropriate. That's exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And it's our role to give them the tools. And so again, if we're all collectively giving those tools of what that looks like. And something else that's been super powerful is with our paraprofessionals, actually having a series of training with them as well, where they're not just someone that's standing around waiting for the certificated staff to give them the direction. They understand that they are just as powerful with that relationship, with supporting every child and being able to intervene and understanding the tools. And so them feeling like they have everything that they need as well to be equipped and serve each and every child within the classroom. And so the next layer of that is everybody getting the same trainings, but then actually pushing in, and I think Jolie, you mentioned this too, that in-class coaching. So it's one thing to go and hear it. It's another to have someone be side by side with you, model, making sure that that they could see it, they could have a trusted person to be like, let me try it, I'm struggling here, that shadowing, and then with that gradual release. And we have that with, we have a beautiful behavior model, because again, behavior is not a disability, but a lot of times when you have a high behavior, that gets tracked within special ed. So trying to figure out how do we support that. So we've channeled that out separately so that we have just an early childhood behavior coordinator who supports that. And then we have an early childhood TOSA who supports all the other things that aren't behavior. So like room environment, what that looks like, how children move through it. And so both of them understanding how they work together and how they have their different roles and what that looks like side by side so that every staff member within the classroom is supported. And then the last layer I would say is really our parent empowerment program, which we call PEP within our districts. And it's bringing in parents, and this is a part where we've begun and we've started with our critical component of where our tier 3 are, but our goal is really to get down in tier 1 and tier 2, so that parents are all with us all along and not just when it becomes that tier 3 piece. And they are, but right now we have a very intensive parent empowerment program that's supporting parents in how to manage a behavior, because sometimes they are like, we don't know what to do, and it's got to be special ed. So it's like, no, it's not. And here are the tools for you to do. This is what we're doing at school, and this is how to help at home. And it's a very intensive program based out of Vanderbilt, that model. And so we're really proud of that as well.
Thank you. So many moving parts and those essential pieces of understanding that in preschool, you have so many players. It's not just 2 teachers. There are so many staff members, so many service providers, and then the community, which is your family. So really hearing how you all support that is so helpful. So I want to take us now to our wins and highlights, and I'm going to turn it over to Jolie.
Yeah, I kind of already a little bit touched on this, but just, our teachers, all of them support inclusion. Like, I mean, it went from like, are we going to have to do toilet training to like the kids are coming in. And if you visit any of our classrooms, I love the SDC classrooms where they have the picture icon of the gen ed teacher. And so it's part of their schedule where they'll go over and put the picture of the teacher, like it's my turn to go over there. And so, some of our youngest students, they may only get to spend, 15 minutes at a time. We're building that up. And hopefully the goal was to have at least 10 of our students that have moderate to severe disabilities dually enrolled, and we are almost at 20 right now. So that's not speech only. Those are kids with significant disabilities spending the majority of their time, 2 hours into our state preschool program. So I'm very proud of that. And we wouldn't be able to do it without that aligned paperwork. And I think doing the online enrollment has removed a lot of barriers than that big packet that you typically do for all of that. And then the family support, when the parents are coming in for, that's the first time they've really heard that their child's going to need so much support in maybe an SDC classroom. And so when we talk about our program and the general ed preschool program, and the students in those classrooms are working on a lot of the same things that their children are working on, and they'll have an opportunity to be with their typically developing peers. Families are just very excited. They don't bat an eye. They're very supportive to do the paperwork that they need. And so that was a huge win for us because we were a little nervous about that. So thank you, Heather, for making us do it, helping us with that.
Thank you, Jolie. And on this next slide, I just want you to have you highlight and appreciate your staff here.
Oh, I didn't even see this. Yes. So our staff, also our coaches, do learning communities for TK teachers and things like that, where they teach a lot of the strategies for conscious discipline for students that have disabilities or just have, some trauma or whatever. And so this is our staff and some of the classes that they held, and my parent advisory meeting over there, where we always talk about inclusion and what that looks like. And we won that award the year before last. I said, I want that award. And then I was surprised. I must have willed it in there, willed the award. So thank you. We got the inclusion award last year from SIP. So
the inclusion award is earned through hard work, and it definitely was more than just willing. Your staff and you have done an amazing job. So now let's hear about some wins from Eileen and Charmaine.
So for us, when we were talking about this and the things that we think have trickled out to make a big difference, I think some of it starts with how we assess students just when they come in and start, and our ability to decide who requires a full assessment, who needs speech only, and who maybe the parents just need to enroll in preschool and give their child some exposure to being part of a classroom. So we were able to take two different teams, a bilingual team and an English only team, and create one so that students and families experience the same assessment regardless of whether you were Spanish speaking or you were English only. And so that was a big win, because we were seeing such discrepancies in what would come from two different teams doing those assessments. Our change to a diagnostic classroom, like some of the things, as Charmaine and I talked, she's like, I'm embarrassed to say we used to do it that way. And we are too. But we brought students in and we did one day, bam, done, you're done being assessed, right? And so the idea of a diagnostic classroom that maybe many of you have been doing for many years is new to us in the last couple of years. And so having students come and be part of a preschool environment for 5 days and assessing through that natural preschool play environment was big. And then talking about what options we have for placement. So before I was partnering with Charmaine, we didn't have options. If students qualified, they went to SDC, and you either went to 2 days, 3 days, or 5 days, and that was it, because we didn't have any other ways to do it. And while that sounds terrible, because that's like 4 years ago, like it's yesterday, right? It was a big shift for us to just rip off the Band-Aid and start that pilot program and have 4 different options that we could look at when the assessment team was talking about a student and their needs. And do you want to add to that, those options or anything? But
Right, we're still pushing ourselves, because there are still, like, when we think about the barriers and thinking about what Jolie has, like what they have, again, because they have so many gen ed classes, you can create something different. If you have that many gen ed classrooms and you have this many students with disabilities, you can push them in and sort them out. We have almost 1-for-1 due to the number of community preschools, and that's been our biggest challenge. So how do we get all of our children with identified disabilities into gen ed experiences? And the best one that we could come up with was co-teach, and just put them all together and everybody. So the dream is really around having centers within areas within our district where it's just preschool and everybody serves everybody within that same setting, and it's just preschool. So, but that is our next barrier to overcome, and what we're hoping with the EAP grant to be able to do is build those centers where everyone can exist together. So in the meantime, we've tried to create as many different placement options with the current facilities and the current programming we have. And so that's been part of, again, we're in the middle of it, we're still pushing forward, and our ultimate goal would be to have everybody together and not have and not have those differences. But we try and recognize that we've come very far from where we were and where we're going to get to. So we're still on our journey. We know where we want to get to. We're proud of where we've come from, but we know we still have more to go.
Absolutely. Offering that continuum of support is so important. And both programs have emphasized that continuum, and celebrating those tiny wins along the way is what keeps you going, right? It's what keeps the work going. So Eileen and Charmaine, give a little shout out and appreciation to your staff.
yeah, these pictures are great examples of our time working together. And the one in the top right corner is when our co-teach program was honored by the San Diego Honda Dealers Association for their work on inclusion, which is a lovely, their classroom is just the epitome to me of what inclusion should be. When I go there and I walk in, I can't tell who's who. I can't tell what teacher is which one. Well, I know, but you know what I mean? If I bring a guest in, they don't know who's who's a paraprofessional, which students have IEPs and which don't, and everyone's learning together. And it was nice to have Honda honor them in their program, but it's been a lot of work, a lot of PD, a lot of mind shift, and like Charmaine's been saying, there's still so far to go on the journey. But we can see out there, and we can see the few steps that are coming next, and the out there is pretty still far out there. There's still a ways to go.
Such an important thing to note too is that you don't have to have it all figured out to be a model, right? We've got Marysville here and we've got La Mesa Spring Valley here, and they're very much still in the process, but they are still very much models. So with that, we're going to move on to our very last question, and honoring time, Jolie, go ahead and give your last little bits of advice for folks who are listening in right now about the process.
I think I'm going to try to speak slower. I'm sorry. I get super excited about this. Yeah, take care of your team. It is a lot of work. And making sure that, offering opportunities for them to have time out to collaborate and it not being after hours necessarily. I try to say that's your time to go home and take care of yourself. Find, two teachers that are willing to give it a try, to even schedule time to go out on recess together, if that's the only, or the outdoor play, I should say. Still talking elementary. And then I love the continuum of services that we're creating, and just, kids that spend a lot more time in the SDC, those that spend some time, those that spend 2 hours or more, those that are getting push-in services. So we're really trying to create, because they're not all one size fits all. And just my passion comes from just seeing the students, and like Eileen and Charlemagne said, is that when you walk into the classroom, you're kind of go, well, which child's the one that has the IEP? Like, you don't know, and it's not like you want to pick them out, but they belong to be in the same classroom, and the children that are typically developing, on the right path or whatever, don't have disabilities, they learn so much from those students. I mean, looking at the students that become caretakers or accept the differences of others, whether they're in a walker or whether they have Down syndrome. It's the most beautiful thing, I think you can ever witness, in life, when you think of purpose. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting a little too sentimental, but it just is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So I applaud our teachers and everything we're doing for our kids and putting them on the right step. So
Jolie, I don't think there's too much passion in the work that we do, right? We all know how passionate we all are about this, and I'm really excited for us to be able to hear from Jolie's teachers during our session next week. All right, so Eileen and Charmaine.
All right, advice. Kind of funny. Sorry. So I guess our main advice really is just start from where you are, because I think we got a little overwhelmed by the whole possibility of everything and hearing what other people are doing and trying to figure it out. It was like, oh my gosh. So, the whole book of how do you eat an elephant? So we've just taken that to heart, one bite at a time. We started with where we are. We figured out what we thought the best next step was. We weren't afraid to make a mistake. We weren't afraid to move forward. But we had to just figure out where to start and keep moving that forward. And then really with every decision we're making, we keep asking ourselves, what would we do if this were our child? What do we believe in? How does this go back to our vision for it? And all our goals really are to continue to make our team stronger, feel more competent, and able to do whatever, support each and every child, and just keep chipping away at those barriers. And like I said, our next goal really is to build those little centers and create just preschools for all, and not have anybody have to be identified to get what they need. So just start where you are. That's our biggest advice.
Amazing advice too. Thank you so much. So at this point of our presentation, we're at the question and answer section. And noting that we have about 9 minutes left of the session, please feel free to put your questions into the chat or use the raise your hand feature. But before we get into questions, can we all just take a moment to show appreciation for Eileen and Charmaine and Jolie for being here today, for our ASL interpreters who are amazing and wonderful. Before we all leave today, at the end of question and answer, we're going to offer a survey for you all to share your feedback about the session. And then also make sure that you know that this isn't the end of it. We've got another session coming up next week and the following week. And we're going to get into those practical pieces of collaborative partnerships. So please stay on if you have any questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording at this point.